Okay, so I just wanted to share once again with everyone the way that I've integrated online resources into my teaching over the last 10 years. Apologies from the outset because most of you will probably know most of this, but I thought I would put it into an integrated format so that you could see how I use it sort of in the round, and there might be something new there, hopefully, or if you can take anything away at all, then that would be absolutely great. And hopefully, it will stimulate a discussion because I guess over the last 2 years, we've been using online resources more and more. In fact, I felt like I'd come into my own, except that 1 year ago I decided to retire. So, just as online learning caught up with me, I decided to step back from it. But anyway, hopefully there'll be something there that's useful for you. Now, just to explain what the whole idea of this flipped learning is that you sort of turn what we had been doing for many, many years on its head. So in a traditional classroom, the teacher will stand at the front of the classroom, present the information that the teacher wants the students to learn, um, including explanations, grammar explanations, pronunciation practice, listen and repeat, and all that sort of thing. And that would generally happen at the beginning of each lesson. That would be followed then by some kind of task in class, so that the students then were able to manipulate the knowledge and the language that they'd been presented with, and then finally they would be asked to go home and do a homework task, which would again consolidate what they'd learned in the lesson. And that worked very, very well until modern technology caught up with us and enabled us to do this. So we can now put the information dissemination part of the lesson, which has always been a significant part, onto video tutorials, and then allow the students to access that information themselves at home via a homework task. And we can also move rote learning online. Of course, that always happened at home in any case, through writing things out, but we can use the many free and also reasonably priced online resources there to help students with their rote learning. And what's more, we can actually use rote learning online, which includes nowadays mostly the pronunciation. So you kind of get a free native speaker pronunciation in there if you're a non-native speaker teacher. So information, grammar, explanation of kanji, and so on, plus rote learning, that's all moved to home tasks, and that happens before the student steps into the classroom. Then when the students walk into the classroom, the space is then opened up for creative tasks, which assume that the student has a certain amount of prior knowledge that they can put into practice in classroom activities. Now, there are many, many benefits of doing this. Before we have a look at the benefits, though, I actually decided when I started this all off, which I can now see was 2013. So the first cohort of year 8 students who actually took a hiragana test in 2013, I was able to compare their results with the previous years. Previously, of course, I had taught every single hiragana letter in the classroom laboriously. I then made the video tutorials teaching all of the letters, again, quite laboriously, but the kids just had to access it at home. And you can see that the results sort of went up quite markedly. And this perhaps surprised me as much as anybody else. So, from 48% to 76%, and I understand that it's only 2 years before I started using the flipped learning, but, you could see that it wasn't that high. And then it did jump up to the high 80s. Of course, there's annual variation, but it was a significant improvement. And the same thing that happened, the statistics are a little bit better for the katakana test. You can see 67%, 65% using conventional means, and then that jumped up again from 78% to as high as 86%. So I did find it was a very effective way to improve results, but also to open up the classroom so that we could do a lot more interactive, communicative activities rather than just me standing in front of the class and just telling them and writing on the whiteboard and so on. Okay, so here, just to go over the actual benefits, and I'm including in the homework tasks, not just video tutorials, because that's what you would use for the grammar and explanation part, but also the incredible online drilling platforms that we have now,
Mm,
lots to choose
cool.
from. So the first thing is that you can actually plan out your annual program right from the word go, and by giving the students a homework task which you have planned out at the beginning of the year, so as the entire curriculum will be covered, then it means that you don't have to worry, as we always used to do, about running out of time. I can remember that panic when I used to think, oh, we've got to get through this, we've got to get through this. By the time we get to this, we haven't got enough class time. And I was, always thinking, how on earth am I going to do this? But what I established in my classroom was regular 2-week chunks of learning that they had to do. So at the beginning of the 2 weeks, I assigned them the video tutorials and what they had to do in terms of using the drilling platforms. And then they had the whole 2 weeks to do that. I didn't actually prescribe when they had to do which particular bit of learning. So I recommended that they spread it out over the 2 weeks, but students are always going to have reasons why they can't do homework on particular days. So at the end of the 2 weeks, I gave them a test every 2 weeks, as regular as clockwork, on the material that they'd learned over the previous 2 weeks. And because I'd planned out at the beginning of the year what those 2-week chunks would be, I knew 100% that at the end of the year I would have covered the entire amount of material that I needed to get through the GCSE. If I can just point out to the materials that I'm going to show you are relevant not just to GCSE, but also the IB ab initio program, which is quite similar to the GCSE. So, and I used to teach both of those. Now, I'm quite an undisciplined person, and I used to hate boxing myself in to a lesson plan for a lesson. But, the realities are we need to get through a certain amount of material, prepare the children for exams. So this was a wonderful compromise for me. So I knew that there was a structure and discipline. I knew we were going to get through what we needed to, but because it was happening at home, my classroom became this wonderful free space where I could simply do whatever I chose. And if I missed something, it didn't matter because the students were getting that disciplined learning at home. So number one benefit. Number two, in terms of differentiation, it's absolutely magic because of course the students are doing it in their own time, in their own way, and they can rewind, and they also don't have to continuously put up their hand and ask questions if they don't get it, which is embarrassing for many students. So, I think we all know that a lot of our weaker students hesitate to say when they don't understand something. Whereas if they have the video tutorial and if they're well structured and well made, they can actually go back as many times as they want to until at their pace they've actually got a handle on what they're supposed to be doing. So that's a huge benefit, is the differentiation. The other thing is if you're trying, as I know we all are, to have a native speaking environment within our classroom, this is very difficult if you don't have English explanations at all, because some things, Japanese grammar, you have to explain it. Now, if you move that out of the classroom, then what happens is once you get into the classroom, they've had that explanation, and you can just run with it, and you can do creative things right from the word go. Again, the drilling programs means that if you're not a native speaker, that the students can hear that constant native speaker repetition as much as they need. And then, as I've said, it means that the classroom becomes a flexible and creative space. You don't need to do such targeted practice as you would normally have done, you can do just free games and get kids to do basically productive activities. So even if it's sitting down and writing, you can get them to write on a free topic, and you've got the time then to go around and work with them. So it sort of moves your classroom from a passive environment to a much more communicative and productive environment. Also, that's the benefits of having the online material as homework, but you can also use the online learning in the classroom very effectively. So first of all, it allows you to have another teacher in the classroom. So you've got your video tutorials, which are an additional teacher. And I used to always break my classrooms up into small groups. So we do some activities all together at the beginning of the lesson. And then the class would be broken up into smaller groups. And we could have some working on, for example, repetition and repeating. If I notice that there are students who either haven't listened to the video tutorials or who still don't really get it, then I can set those children the task of quietly listening to those video tutorials again. Or I can get more advanced students to look at more advanced work, and it does cut down classroom noise. I think that's coming up. So it allows you to be more flexible with getting small groups of children to work at the pace that they're comfortable with. And it does reduce noise in the classroom. Now, when you're teaching a language, that is a significant thing, and I used to always appreciate that. Okay, now this is the main part of the presentation. So where do you get the resources for this? Now, for GCSE, it's quite easy, and it's also extremely flexible. So I'm going to start with my resources, because if you do go with my resources, and you can, dip in and dip out, they're all there done for you. And the first port of call would be my website, which is, there's a link there, japaneseforschools.co.uk. This would be the home page. And to navigate to the actual resources that I'm talking about, you'd have to go up to the top, and you can see across the top here, you've got the GCSE and you've got the IB. And those are the key places that you would go for these resources. Now, I've tried to collate the resources together through the workbooks. The course is divided into 4 distinct different areas with 4 matching workbooks. Now, I actually started with the workbooks, and then I progressed to making the video tutorials and so on to match. And what I did was that I've actually integrated the online materials into the workbook so that the students can have both a printed out workbook with none of the links. It's all available to freely download. And whilst I'm here with the Japan Foundation, could I just thank the Japan Foundation for the support that they have given me over the years to allow me to share this material with everybody completely cost-free. So if you want to use the resources, you click on them, you download them. The basic workbook is to be printed and given to the students. Again, I'm very happy for you to modify it in any way you like, but if you don't modify it, it's all there. But this is the one that I want you to look at, which is the multimedia version. So what I would do is each student would have a paper version of the workbook without any links, and then each student would be able to download from the website, just like anybody can, the multimedia workbook, which they can go to, if you like, as a reference for where the various video tutorials and other supporting websites are. So if we were to have a look, so just say you download, and I'll show you an example from Unit 1 and then from Unit 4. So if we have a look, and I'm not using links from, I'm not actually downloading it and opening it up for you, but it does download and open up just like this. So this here is what the workbook would look like. So this is what you'd actually print and give to the students. So there's lots of room for them to do lots and lots of reading and writing practice. All the grammar explanations are in there. It's all in English. So students have that as a textbook that they can refer to, but they also have this, which is the multimedia version. Now, this is great for the students because when they want to find out where to access the material, they can access it through this workbook if the teacher doesn't actually give it to them another way as a different link, as on their Google Classrooms or whatever they're using. But students, if they want to go back, they can find the video tutorials this way. If they want to go forward, if they're advanced students, they want to see what's coming up and they go, oh, I'm really interested, I want to work really hard, then they can do that. So you just have to click on the link and that will take you straight through the relevant video to the relevant video tutorial. And also you can see challenges. So I've got links to other things. So a student who's done this and goes, yeah, I think I'd like to do a bit more, they can do that challenge and you can either set it for them or not. So if you click on that, you'd see that takes you straight through to then my YouTube video site. And that will take you, and hopefully that will load up. So up comes the video tutorial, which will explain what you would normally have done in class.
We're looking at the hiragana letters A to
that's just
O
me teaching.
In this video tutorial. What you have to do is, when you learn the stroke order of the hiragana, you've got to write it into your books using this system. In the first box, you trace over the grey tracing.
So you can see that's just straight teaching, no different, but it can happen in the home. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is not only is this an area where the students can access the various online resources that match up with what they're doing, but this is what I used to use also as my central go-to place for all my resources as well. And what I would always do is, and I can't do this with my publicly available ones because of copyright issues, but I would go through and work out every single question of every single GCSE exam paper going back to the beginning, and I would note what the topic was, I would get audio, and then I'd put a link in my book so that when I came to doing that particular topic, I would have all my links there. So it would say, okay, question 5 from 2017 GCSE exam paper, a listening task, and then I would have it there already so that in class I might do 1 or 2 actual exam questions, particularly later on in class, and we can all do that together. So you can actually flexibly modify this by putting your own links. So all you need is Adobe Acrobat. You can put all your own links there to kind of customize that for what you want to do and the links that you want, because obviously the links that I've put in are a fraction of what's available out there. Okay, so those are basically the resources. I'll just show you an example. That's the beginning, and as it gets more complicated, this is Unit 4. So in Unit 4 there are much more, there's obviously, it's a lot more intensive, but I want to show you one thing, and I'm going to talk about EdPuzzle, because obviously when I first started, the question is, well, that's all very well saying to students, you've got to go off and do this homework, but we know that, unless we're there with them, how do we get them to do it? And that was always something, that was a big concern. And I think without the websites such as this one that's indicated with this icon here, EdPuzzle, without the hosting platform that allows you to actually monitor what the students are doing, then this all becomes very impractical in the real worlds of school teaching, because of the kids who won't do it, and also because you have to feed back to parents what the students are doing. And for your reporting, it's absolutely vital that you know what they're doing at home. But this is a way that you can do it without laboriously taking in your things and marking everything. And I have to tell you quite honestly that one of the reasons that I retired early, and there were many reasons involved, partly COVID and partly grandchildren who had just been born, but one of the reasons was I actually found as a practicing teacher that I could no longer manage what I was being asked to do. Even though for many years I had minimized my workload by using online resources and online monitoring and getting the kids to do a lot of their homework online, I have never taken in all their homework and been able to mark it all, because I have just never had enough time in my life. And I'd have to say I was a very hardworking teacher, but what is expected of us is just not possible. So this is one way to actually move some of that laborious marking of books onto a platform. So I'll just show you what happens if we click on this link. It will take us straight through to EdPuzzle. And this will come up with an activity, one of the video tutorials. but possibly that I've added questions to. Now, you can use the video tutorials that I've made where I've added questions to, and I'll just show you just how that works, because if you don't know EdPuzzle, this is magic. So this is grammar explanation.
Okay, we're going to look at two different ways to ask where something is. The first way, we're going to use the more simple A is B pattern. And if we translate that into English, we get A wa B des.
And that should be Japanese.
Now to make that into a question, we simply have to add ka on the end. Now that would be the equivalent of station is where? Question mark at the end. Okay, station is where. A wa B desu ka? And if we substitute the A for the actual word station, we get eki wa. And instead of B, we're going to change that to the actual question word for where. Eki wa doko desu ka?
Now we're coming up to a
Eki wa
question.
doko desu ka? Station is where?
So the video will automatically stop at this point and give the students a multiple choice question. So they have to answer this. Now, I can see what they've answered. I can see if they've watched the video. I can see if they've watched portions twice or 3 times or more. I can greet them when they come into the classroom with congratulations for how much of the EdPuzzle they've watched, because if I go back now and open this side, EdPuzzle allows you to actually put your classes onto their system. Now, I'll tell you about the costing in a minute. By the way, I don't work for them. But you can actually have your classes and monitor their work and assign them what you want to do. So if I were to go into one of the video tutorials, and here I can see Eleanor, who took my position at Hockerel after I retired. She's used that, and you can simply assign it to a class. Once you've loaded up your students, you've made your classes, you click on your video tutorial, you can give it to your class, you give a due date when it's due, you give them all that information, they log in, it doesn't cost them anything at all, and then I can monitor very, very carefully what they've been up to. Now I'm actually going to show you how this works, but I'm going to move it across so that I don't show any names. So let's have a look. Now this was during lockdown, so it was when I didn't have very good compliance. What's that? Okay, so you can see in this particular activity, I told them that they're to start it on May the 3rd. There's no due date at all. So this is actually one that I've simply assigned for people if they're interested. If there's a due date, then it's a compulsory activity, and I would always have my due date the same date as the test that I would give them every fortnight, and I always made sure that the lesson of the test, if possible, was before either break time or lunchtime. And that way, if I saw that somebody had not completed watching the activity, then I would allow them to come back and do it in class. I'm so nice. So if they didn't do it at homework, they had to do it in class. So I can log in now and I can see the students. They've not turned it in until I go down here. This student here has done 100%. Handed it in on May the 8th. I can go into this, I can reset progress, I can unassign, and I can even go in and find out, this is an amazing function that I absolutely love, I can actually see how many times the students have watched portions of the video. And I used to come in, and if I could see that anyone had watched a certain portion 2 or 3 times, then I would single them out in class for congratulations. And I would say, this is how you do it. You make sure that you go back and you watch it as many times as you need to. And they had the multiple choice test, at sort of key points, which gives them instant feedback, which tells them either they did understand it or they didn't understand it. So this is all of the teaching that I would have done in class, which is going on online and done by myself, making the video tutorials, Anyway, so that's how you monitor the students. So that's with EdPuzzle. Now there's another way that you can, that the other thing that I want to talk about is not just the video tutorials, but also the rote learning programs. And I know we all learn it, and they are absolutely incredible. So if I just get rid of, oops, sorry about that. If I just get rid of this, and I go back to, whoops, just a second. Okay. Oh. If I just go back here, I've got into Quizlet. Now, Quizlet is one of the really good sites, and I know that you all would know about Quizlet, but if you don't, now's the time to go and find out. But again, this is free if you don't monitor your students. Oh, by the way, in terms of EdPuzzle, to monitor your students, you can do that for free, and you can sign them up for free and everything. But and it used to all be for free, but obviously now that they've got to where they wanted to, they are charging. EdPuzzle will charge you $12.50 a month to save more than 20 video lessons. Now, if you don't pay the subscription fee, I guess you can still use the video lessons, but you can't save them. Because I had the full capabilities when I was using it without paying, because I was an original person who subscribed to that channel. So I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that if you want to get all of the benefits, it's $12.50 a month. Again, I know schools are very, very squeezed, but that is an amount of money which, you know, most schools can afford. And for that, you can do the same thing as I was mentioning before. In other words, you can have your class. There's my year 8 class. And if I were to upgrade, I could monitor how much they've done, how many times they've learned, what days they've learned on, and so on. So I can get an absolutely accurate snapshot of what they're up to. And when it comes to report time, you know, I can say, well, gosh, this person's done so well, and they haven't used any of the online resources. So that's amazing. They've obviously figured it out themselves. They're amazing. Or I can say, you know, this student, well, that result is probably less than they're capable of, and I see they've only done 5 minutes in 2 weeks. So, you know, probably you should be supervising them and making sure that they do 5 minutes every day, because that's going to really improve their, you know, their marks and their skill set. So, you know, you can get those insights. So Quizlet isn't the only one, and I put links in the presentation to others. There's also Language Perfect, which I used for many years, but that is a very expensive one. I don't know how many of you use it. If you can afford it, it's amazing. Again, you can put tests on there. You can with Quizlet as well. You can assign all sorts of different types of rote learning, but the most simple is just a word list, and then they just repeat it over and over again, just like any of those. And most of them will have native language pronunciation, so the students can listen on it as many times as they like, and that is a huge benefit for us. Okay, so the resources, hopefully I've sort of covered the final thing is my YouTube site. Of course, you can just go to independently. I've got a link there, and you can go into the playlists, and you can actually again search through. If you want to skip around, you can search through any of the units. So unit 3, shopping and food playlist, and there it will give you all the video tutorials, so you can sort of mix and match and so on. I have a few minutes now for any questions. Making your own tutorial, that's the very last thing. That requires a little bit of learning, but I learned how to do it just through, you know, using YouTube videos teaching you how to make your own video tutorials. You can do it for nothing if you want to make them a bit fancy, and you can see the progression. My video tutorials from when I started were pretty bad. Now they sort of range from, still some are not that great, but you know, I've figured out things as I've gone along, and you know that they've become hopefully a little bit better. You know, I wouldn't expect everybody to be making their own tutorials, but you can do it if you want to add to the materials that are already there. And again, with video tutorials, it's not just my video tutorials, but mine are tailored exactly to the GCSE program and my workbooks, which you can link to directly, and it's right there. The activities there in the book. The video tutorial is there, but of course you can just go onto YouTube and you can just find thousands of videos explaining anything you want, and you can import that into EdPuzzle. You can put your own questions, you can assign it to your own students. So this is an incredibly flexible thing that you can do, right from doing what I've done, which is making my own video tutorials just the way that I would teach my class, so it's just like another mini me there teaching the students, all the way to using other people's video tutorials in your own way. It's totally and completely flexible. But the principle is the same, is that you get the kids to do the learning at home, and your classroom becomes this fantastic place of games, and you don't have to even worry about what you've achieved, because so long as the kids are having fun and using Japanese and creatively, the program is being covered. So that's the presentation.